Hey y'all, this is Alli Spears, your host of the Ag Chicks podcast, where I cultivate connections with the women who are helping feed the world. Today's guest is Alli Fender. Alli grew up in the gorgeous San Diego backcountry on a small dairy and beef operation. She attended San Diego Mesa College and played soccer on the women's team while attending the animal health program offered there. In 2014, she obtained her Associates of Science degree in Animal Health Technology and became a licensed registered veterinary technician. She worked in several small animal hospitals in the area. A month after graduation in 2014, she and her high school sweetheart were married on Mesa Chiquita Ranch, where she grew up. Her dad gifted her and her husband Bryce 10 bred heifers, which was the start of their beef herd. Flying F Ranch was established in 2020 after Bryce and Alli created the brand and business selling beef directly to San Diego consumers. Their motto is, "We give a flying F about beef." In 2021, they added Registered Black Angus cattle into their herd to improve carcass quality. The couple learned more about genetics and began breeding more mindfully, propelling their beef business to a higher level. Bryce and Alli raised their two sons, Warren and Wells, on the ranch together. They believe that raising the next generation beside them will teach the boys valuable life lessons and memories. Alli is an active member and vice president of the San Diego CowBelles and helps with the local ag and the classroom lessons, beef promotion, and advocacy for our industry. In her spare time, she breeds and shows Australian Shepherds, participates in CrossFit, and helps with social activities for her sons, and is also the dog leader for her son's 4-H program. Started podcasting and manages the business of Flying F Ranch. Please give a big ol' Ag Chicks welcome to Alli Fender. So, Alli, can you tell me a little bit about where you guys are located at in, I know California, but a little bit maybe about kind of the area and those types of things?
Yes, exactly. So San Diego is where I am from, and I know a lot of people will think of San Diego and they think of the Petco Park, they think of SeaWorld and the San Diego Zoo and all the wonderful things that San Diego has to offer. But just an hour northeast of San Diego, I live in the backcountry where there's rolling hills and cattle and a little bit of agriculture. So that is where I am located, and my family's been here since 1921.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we started as a dairy operation, and then over time it just converted over to beef. And so, yeah, I've been living in the same spot since I was born. So I'm very thankful for being here and, just being a part of the San Diego community because it's a really great place to live.
Yeah, and if you, I mean, you just mentioned obviously you've been there for your whole life, and what a terrible place to be for your whole life. It
I
doesn't
know.
get
Yeah.
much more beautiful than San Diego and the San Diego area. My dad always jokes that when he retires, he's going to buy a house in Texas and a house in San Diego.
Oh, there
So,
you go. I can't complain with that. I would buy a house in Texas too. So your dad's on the right page.
right? Yeah, yeah. My brother comes down there a lot for baseball stuff, and so they're pretty sold on San Diego at this point. So not a bad
Yeah,
place to be at all.
totally. I agree 100%.
But you're right too. I think a lot of people, and we can kind of get into this in a minute too, but Alli and I just had a conversation over on her podcast, so
Yeah.
be sure to check that out, and we'll talk about it here in a minute as well. But people don't typically think of California as being an agricultural hub. I think just in the grand scheme of a general conversation. So can you maybe talk to that in terms of being in ag and in California, and just kind of maybe the situations you've had with that?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I'm from San Diego. I actually joined the San Diego Farm Bureau not too long ago. And just alone in San Diego, there's so many commodities here. We have everything from like citrus to potted plants, shrubberies, like for, landscape. We have avocados, strawberries, fresh cut flowers, everything. There's so many things. Livestock is not a huge commodity here. There are some ranches in the area, like pork or pig operations and some cattle industries, lambs, things like that. But it's not like huge, and it's not like what we're known for agriculture in San Diego as my local demographic. But across the whole state, there is so much that has, we're like one of the number one commodities in the world for supplying food for everybody. So I think that's something that's not really super talked about. I think within the industry of ag, it's very obvious that we are very important for the world food production. But on the grand scheme of things, people just are not aware. There's a lot of negative connotation that goes towards Californians just because of politics and weird rules and things that I absolutely don't agree with. But California is not a bad place to live. I love where we are. And I also think that California is worth fighting for. So I am, very open about how I feel, especially within the agricultural space, because that's what I am, well versed with, and being able to have those deep conversations with consumers that just don't understand, because a lot of times they just don't get it, and that's totally fine. And it's our job to be able to tell that story on a level that is respectful for both parties, and that is, understanding on all levels, that we can just understand each other a little bit better. So yeah, I think it's something that is getting better over time. Conversation wise. And I feel like whenever I have conversations about agricultural entities within California or San Diego, it's usually a pretty beneficial conversation. And most of the time people get something out of it. So I think it's just about, talking and sharing the truth, and, making those deep connections with people, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think that's true no matter where you are, right? I mean, California, like you said, is a unique place just because there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
But as a fellow Californian, I really could not agree more with you. California gets a bad rap a lot of the times, and a lot of the times what we get a bad rap for has nothing to do with agriculture.
Right.
It's outside things, outside forces that agriculture has to live by, just because they're typically policies and rules and regulations that impact how we do business and how we produce food for everyone else. But it really is not, it's not a bad place. Great weather, great people, a lot of food coming in and out of there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of room for opportunity in agriculture there too, I'd say. Now, that being said, I don't want to make this a California podcast by any means.
No problem.
But excuse me, how are you guys being impacted by just the sheer amount of rain and weather that you guys have had lately?
It has been totally wild. I mean, a year ago we were praying for rain, and it was
Right.
so dry, and a lot of cattle producers in our area and across the whole state were selling cows because we couldn't feed them. And then now we have so much water, it's literally squirting out of squirrel holes for us. There's creeks coming through like cow trails, rushing water, ruining some of the road structures. Is becoming a little bit a little bit devastating in some ways, but we totally do need it. I think for us personally on our ranch, all of our ponds are full, which I have not seen in ever, I don't think, which is really an amazing sight to see. My dad actually had a photographer come and did like a drone overhead look of the ranch, and it just looks so crazy green, and all the ponds are full. It just looks like paradise.
Yeah.
But as we're recording this podcast, it's raining right now again.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a bunch of like funny memes online floating around, like San Diego's just like, oh my God, we're getting just as much rain, if not more, than Seattle. And I guess that's the truth. I guess I looked at some statistic that currently San Diego has more rain than Seattle right now. So
Wow.
that kind of tells you how much rain is flowing everywhere. And we actually had a couple good snowstorms too. A lot of people don't really think about snow in San Diego, but San Diego is a pretty big county, and it has a lot of different variance within climate. And where I live, where the ranch is, we're up in I think our elevation's like 3,300 feet. And then a little bit higher can be, I think it goes as high as like, I want to say 7,000 feet in the high mountains. So I'm kind of on the low spectrum of the mountains, but we do get snow. And just recently we had enough snow here at the ranch that my kids and I were snowboarding, which is like not ever normal.
Yeah.
Like that was the first time, probably last time that's ever going to happen, unless it keeps
Wow.
snowing or something. But it's been wild. But we're thankful for every single drop. It's something that we really, really need. We were just speaking after we recorded my podcast that it would be nice if California can figure out a way to be able to collect all this water, because right now a lot of it's getting pushed out to the ocean, which is kind of a shame because we've been begging for water for so long.
Right.
And there's no ideas on how to conserve all this water, which is kind of a wild thought. So I hope maybe at some point somebody is working on some sort of plan for that. That would be nice. But we're holding up. I can't complain too much, to be honest.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things where it's uh there was a drought for so long and everybody there was in such dire need of water for
Yeah.
so long that you don't want to complain because you find like prayers have been answered, but also
Yeah.
I think you might have said like, it's too much of a good thing kind of at this
Yeah.
point. And so it's
Right.
kind of not like you don't want to complain, but yet it's going to cause some issues and some challenges. And yeah, too bad California doesn't have their stuff together in terms of infrastructure to be saving this in some reservoirs and all that stuff,
Right.
because I'm sure there'll be another drought in the future. And so um,
Exactly.
that's just the way things are. And that's just one of the challenges of living within the industry that we do and working through the daily battles sometimes, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Good old California. They
I
always
know.
know. They always know.
Always something going on in California.
Exactly. Got to keep it exciting.
Oh yeah, yeah, can never be boring there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I do want to kind of go just back a little bit and talk a little bit more about kind of how you grew up. You said you grew up on a dairy operation, and so can you tell a little bit more about that? And did you always know you kind of wanted to be involved in agriculture growing up?
Yeah, so I grew up on the dairy. Literally, my dad would take us to work every day. He was a milker, so my grandpa was like the boss of the dairy, and basically back then, all of his kids worked for him. So my dad was a milker. He milked twice a day, midnight and noon every single day. So he would take my brother and I remember sitting in car seats, and he would just like put the car seats right in front of the cows, like the back end of the cows, and we can see them all put the machines on the cows. And so that's how I grew up. I literally pretty much grew up in a barn. My grandpa had sold all of those, basically all of them, in 1999, I believe. I remember I was in elementary school, so he sold all the dairy cows. They were all Holsteins and brown Swiss cows. So he sold them all, and then he ended up buying a ranch out in New Mexico,
Mm,
and that ranch was solely beef. And my grandpa was a big advocate for Hereford cattle. So back out there, he did a lot of Herefords. They weren't registered or anything fancy like that, but that was kind of like his go-to breed back then. And then as he sold all the dairy cows here in California, he resupplied them with or resupplied the ranch with beef cattle. And we had
gotcha.
a huge variety of different types of cattle. We had a lot of Limousine, a little bit of Angus, Herefords, just a mishmash of all kinds of cows. So that's kind of what started the beef side for us here on Mesa Chiquita Ranch, is the ranch that my family owns and operates still to this day. And I grew up doing 4-H and FFA, and I've always had that passion for livestock and animals, really. I've always had like a big heart for animals. I remember riding a horse when we were gathering cattle when I was a kid, and I was gathering cows with like 4 or 5 of my cousins. And I just remember feeling like this is like the life. Like, I just
Yeah.
want to do this every single day. This is like the best ever. Then as you grow up, you start thinking about career, like what's going to work for your life, how are you going to make money, how are you going to provide for your family. So you go to college and you do all the things to do what you're taught to do your entire life. You graduate high school, you go to college, you graduate college, you go to, you can just keep going, you keep learning and keep growing. So yeah, I ended up going to college and playing soccer for 2 years on a women's soccer team, and just at a community college in San Diego. And that community college actually had an animal health technology program as well, which caught my eye. And I was like, I'm just going to apply for this program and see what the heck, why not? It sounds like something I'd be into. And I got accepted to the program. And basically, the whole program is to become a registered veterinary technician. So you get a license to be able to help practice in a veterinary world. You can do anything you want, really. You can specialize in like dental procedures in animals. You can do large animal, you can do zoo animals,
Yep.
you can do all kinds of different specialties. I ended up just kind of going down like a general path because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I did want to do large animal, but large animal medicine is so competitive to do down here. We have the Del Mar racetracks, which,
Yeah.
we get all the big fancy schmancy race horses and just a lot of like fancier stuff when
Yeah.
it comes to large animal medicine. So you kind of have to know somebody to get into that kind of field. But I ended up working at a they called it Animal and Bird Hospital of Del Mar. So I actually did work in Del Mar for a little bit and worked with some wild birds, not necessarily wild, but like parrots and parakeets and African grays and all these like really cool different birds, which I'm not a bird person at all. So
Me
I
either.
that wasn't my thing, but I love dogs and cats. So that was always something that I was passionate about. So I did know that I wanted to do something with animals, which is what led me to, kind of do a little bit more of like my own spin on like a small business for my husband and I. So I guess like a quick little side story, we were gifted 10 bred heifers as our wedding gift from my dad. So that's what started our herd. And at that time, that was when I was first working at Animal and Bird Hospital in Del Mar. So we were just kind of like figuring things out. It was kind of like our little side project that was like for fun. And then it just developed into something where we were really into it. We started like looking into more Black Angus genetics because that was something that we were interested in. We looked into doing direct to consumer marketing. It just became a whole other animal of its own, no pun intended.
Right.
But so that became something that I was really interested in. And I remember I worked at another hospital in a nearby town, animal hospital. I just remember like on my downtime during lunch or whatever, I would just be like looking up stuff about cattle production and about meat science and all these other things. And my head was not where it was in the animal vet like medicine world. It was more towards that livestock and doing something on the ranch world. And as I mentioned before, when I was riding my horses with like my cousins on the ranch, that was the dream. And so I just felt like, you know what, that's what I want to do. So I'm pushing more towards doing what I want. I'm like a total millennial and just quit my
Right.
job and do my own thing now. So that's where I'm at. I quit my job in October of 2022. And now I'm just full-time marketing our Black Angus direct to consumer cattle. And we're also dabbling a little bit into the registered Black Angus genetics and stuff like that. So that's where hopefully that answers your question. I
Yeah.
don't know if I just like rambled on forever and ever, but that's where I'm at.
No, that kind of went right into what I was hoping to ask you next in terms of like how y'all's business kind of started and everything.
Yeah.
First of all, congratulations, because I know taking that leap is something I have not done, but I'm envious of you, but also I understand the challenge and just like navigating that whole world of like, okay, this has to succeed now. So
Yeah.
that's exciting though for y'all and your operation, and really being able to kind of put all of your focus and energy into making it something for not only a business side, but like your family as well. So that could be continued on, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. I think for me, I have a lot of brands in the fire, a lot of irons in the fire. So for me, I've like really taken a step back within the past couple of years and trying to decide like what is important, what is my priorities in life. And for me, my number one priority is always going to be my kids. And I have two sons, they're 6 and 4, so they're little guys, and they're
Yeah.
only going to be little for so long. So I want to make sure I'm very present for them. And when I was working in the at the veterinary clinic, they wanted me to work full time and all of these things, and I just couldn't commit. And I told
Yeah.
them like I know where my priorities are at and I'm not working full time.
Yeah.
And so it spun out of proportion to where like they basically wanted me full time, or they wanted me to take a step back because I was a supervisor at this animal hospital. So they basically told me they wanted me to be full time or to take a step down from my supervisor position and take a pretty big pay cut. And that's when I was like, screw this.
Nah,
Like, this is
I'm
a
out.
sign. I'm done. And I
Yeah.
just quit. I didn't give them a 2-week notice. I was a total, like, probably just like a little priss, but I just didn't care at the
Yeah.
time. But like, I think it's just about priorities and making sure you know what is important to you. And that was always something on my heart. Like I said, I was like doing research, like not even on my lunch break, I'll admit, like I was doing research like in between clients because that was where my head was at.
Right.
So I just decided, you know what, that's not my priority anymore. I want to focus on my kids. I want to be there for them. So this allows me to be more present for them. I'm able to do like the mom thing, like take them to baseball practice, take them to soccer games, do 4-H with them. I'm doing 4-H dog leader for the 4-H program up here. My kids are little, so they're able to show dogs.
Right.
So that's my main focus. So that's what my driving factor is, and doing all the things that I'm doing right now, and why I've made the choices that I've made.
Yeah. And, when, in all of the business things I've been to and listened to and watched, they always talk about finding your why. And it sounds like you have a very clear expectation and awareness of what your why is. And that is going to be very powerful for y'all moving forward, because you have a clear direction of that. And I think that just allows you to make decisions in terms of like what you're going to do, the directions you're going to go in. And so I respect you for that, because that's not always something that's easy to figure out. So kudos to you for understanding it and really leaning into it too, because even if you understand it, sometimes you can't take that leap. So so
I know it can be a little
congratulations. That's
scary.
exciting. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. But too, okay, so I want to talk about y'all's business in terms of kind of, you've started this or you got the 10 heifers from your dad, decided to go into kind of the raising the cattle beef business side of things. So y'all do consumer or direct to consumer, correct?
Right. Yeah.
So walk us through kind of how that decision maybe came about, or kind of what that entails, because again, going back to California, it's definitely different there than maybe Texas, for example, and just regulations and all that kind of stuff. So what does that look like for y'all, and why is that kind of the route y'all chose to go?
So for us, like going back to being in college, and all my college friends, from like my soccer team to even the people that I went to animal health technology school, to people that I had in random like GE classes in college, people knew that I was the cowgirl. Like they just, that I just had that persona, I guess. And I was like the odd duck out of everyone that was in my realm of the San Diego friends that I had made. And always the question came up, like, do you sell beef? Like, can I buy some beef from you? And that was never something that my family ever did in the past. Like the generic, like cattle, like cow calf operation life cycle. You have the calf, you wean them, they go to the auction, they get bought up by a feedlot, and then they end up at the slaughterhouse, and then they go to Costco or go to wherever you pick up your meat products. And I never really considered any of that. And I remember also in college, I took a business course that was just like a general business course. And one of the projects we had was to turn a business that you know of into something better by making some sort of improvement upon it. And so I chose my dad's ranch, and I was like, I'm going to add, what if we went organic? And this was just like a random idea I had. And for the record, we're not organic right now, but I just like threw it in there. I'm like, what if we were organic? Like, what would that look like? Would we make more money? And so I ended up doing all the research, making the phone calls. And then it came to the point like, hey, we probably could go organic if we really wanted to. Like, we're not feeding anything that's not, not organic. So I was like, that's what kind of maybe sparked it a little bit for me back then. I'm like, we could probably sell meat to people. Like, why not? And then as my husband, Bryce, and I, after we got married and everything, we started trying to think of like different ways where we can diversify our 10 head of heifers, because, it's not a whole lot. I mean, it's more than what some people may have. But for example, like my dad's got like 130 head of cattle, and that's how he makes his living.
Right.
And for us, like 10 head of cattle is like a little passion project, So we're like, how can we make a difference in our business, and how can we make it bigger? How can we excel in a new direction? So we had friends that were dipping into the direct to consumer realm within our community of like San Diego. So we started looking into things, making phone calls, doing all the research and whatnot. And yes, California's got lots of regulations. So what Bryce and I do, because we don't have a USDA processor anywhere nearby us, it's like a 6-hour drive.
Right.
And that's like all directions. We can either go to Arizona for 6 hours, or we can go to Central California and do that way if we wanted to. But for right now, it doesn't really make financial sense for us to be able to be doing that, unless we were taking up like a load of like 6 calves to have processed or whatever. But it's not going to make sense if we are only bringing in like 1 or 2. So that was not going to work for us. So what we ended up doing is just like in 4-H and FFA. So having that background, we'd sell whole and half beef, like live weight. So essentially our customers are buying a live cow, like they own a cow.
Yep.
And we just kind of set up the whole process for them, from the butcher to getting to a meat cut and wrap shop to picking up and all that kind of stuff. So basically we're taking care of their cow for them, and then they just pay the live weight fee to us, and then they go ahead and pay the cut and wrap fees to our butcher that we use. And that's how we do it. And it's very simple. It's pretty foolproof. I don't have like hundreds of transactions if I was selling like retail cut meat.
Right.
And this way, like I have like 5 transactions or 6 transactions in like a set of beef or whatever
Right.
the case may be. So I feel like for anyone listening who's considering doing beef direct to consumer, I highly recommend doing whole and half first before you dip into the whole retail thing. I think retail cuts are very fantasized right now, or romanticized, I think, because, you know, a lot of people are doing it and I think that's great. But I also think it's a lot of work, especially if you're first getting started in something like that. But I think a good way to ease into it is by doing like more of the wholesale style of beef shares. And that's a great way to do it. And then you can find out if that's something that is going to work for you or not. So far it's working for us. And now we're at the point where we're contemplating if we want to start doing more or start doing retail cuts rather than just wholesale. But we'll always offer both because our wholesale customers love it. And we have returning customers all the time, like every 6 months or whatever. So it works for us. And it's a great way to get started if that's something that people are thinking about.
Yeah. No, I think I appreciate you saying that, because I agree. I think the retail side of things is kind of what people think they have to do.
Right.
But actually that the model you just talked about as far as what y'all do is the exact model that I'm looking into kind of as well. And actually it's not that different from Texas in terms of that side of things. I'm
Right.
sure the retail and the USDA and all that kind of stuff, I'm sure. And then California regulations, if there's permits and all that kind of stuff, may be a little different. I would also say too, it's also, I mean, it's obviously going to vary kind of state to state. So make sure you kind of do your research and homework if you're wanting to get into that side of things. So in terms of research, how did you just kind of do your own research, or was there something that a program you went to? Actually, I know you went to, M5, was that before the thought, or did that kind of launch this for you?
So we were doing our beef before M5.
Okay.
And but M5 definitely accelerated the process. So I think that is a really awesome program to get connected with if you are somebody who has a business that has to do with agriculture, or even not agriculture really. It's a really nice, like, streamlined program where you get to learn all the back end stuff on business in general, plus like shipping meats if you want to do that, plus like, you know, there's a course that I'm doing right now that's ranch to retail, which is basically Mary Heffernan and her husband Brian basically explained the process of how they got their own personal USDA certified plant and slaughterhouse or slaughter trailer and cut and wrap shop on, like, it's just theirs, you know. So, you know, when there's a will, there's a way. But yeah, so I have utilized that as a program, and it's been very beneficial. And again, we were talking about it a little bit on my podcast, that the networking is alone worth it, really, you know. So you're connecting with all these people that have all these unique qualities and you know, a similar mindset as you. So I think that's definitely a great program. And I know there's lots of other programs out there, but the M5 entrepreneurs community has really helped me excel in my business for sure.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I've had Mary on the podcast, and she's great.
Cool.
And yeah, there's so many resources too out there, I feel like, at this point, to where if there's something you're interested, I'm sure there's someone who has a training or a class or a session or something. That being said, do your research on the sessions or whatever you're signing up for a little bit, I'd say too. Because, you know, just because somebody sells beef doesn't mean that they maybe are qualified to be having a class on it. But also, anybody in Texas, and I'm sure other states as well, I went to a class through our just state extension that was totally free. And so it was like a whole day just about direct to consumer. And so another avenue potentially for people to look into if you're listening and interested. But no, I mean, that's awesome. I think it sounds like y'all have had success so far, and it sounds like it's kind of prompted you for growth, which is hopefully the goal, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I would have to say too, pick up the phone and call people,
Yeah.
because that's what I did before M5. I called all the slaughterhouses. I called butchers. I called the county, the San Diego County, to make sure, all this stuff is proper and whatnot. And, you can send an email, but if you talk to people on the phone, it just is like a whole different vibe. And I feel like I got a lot more out of that. And I feel like people respect that a little bit more sometimes when you're trying to like really find out information. And some people might be a little bit more willing to like communicate with you and be able to like help you succeed in your own business. So I did do a lot of phone calls among like lots of Googling and research and stuff like that. And then the M5 thing happened
Yeah.
after the fact.
Yeah. Well, awesome. And kind of, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah.
And then also you, all the things that we just talked about, but then you also have a podcast. So let's kind
Yeah.
of touch on that a little bit real quick as well. How did that kind of start, and what is your kind of hopes with that?
Yeah, so I started it just because I like to talk to people. And the whole premises of the podcast is entrepreneurship within agriculture. And that's how it kind of started. I actually renamed the podcast in, I think, January of 2023 this year. I could be wrong on that, but just recently I renamed the podcast to the Agripreneur Empire Podcast. Before that, it was called Flying F Ranch Podcast, which is our business, Flying F Ranch. But the idea behind the podcast is pretty much the same as it was before. And you and I, Alli, were talking about that I took a break from the podcast for a little bit. And a lot of that too is, like I said before, it was just priorities, like I had my, the kids and shuffling around. This was back when I worked as an RVT in the hospital. So, that took up a lot of time. And it wasn't something that was a priority for me. And it was something for fun, really.
Yeah.
And then after I quit my job, I just like had a fire, and I was just so mad about, the whole situation that I had to go through with my career job, that I was like, I'm going to start the podcast over again and, just have a new spin on it and just like give it a little facelift. So I renamed it the Agripreneur Empire Podcast. It still is it's still geared towards agriculture and entrepreneurship, but also like helping people take that leap of faith in, if they have that dream on their mind and they just don't feel comfortable in their career job or whatever career path they are on, and being able to say like, it's okay, and let go, and then pursue that career job, or that, your dream job, or whatever that looks like for you. So that's kind of what the podcast is about now. And it's been a lot of fun. I've had a lot of really fun guests on there, and it's just kind of like taken a new life of its own. So, looking into the future of it, I don't know what's going to happen. It's just, like I said, it's a passion project for me. It's been fun now that I have a little bit more time to work on it a little bit at home, and I do everything myself right now. So it's just, it's just something that's been kind of a fun thing for me.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're listening to this podcast, obviously, we just recorded a episode for Alli as well. So go check that one out as well. Check out her podcast. And I think I love the kind of goal behind it, and very similar, I think, to kind of my approach and kind of why I started, just kind of exploring other opportunities and other things that people in agriculture are doing. And so any way we can celebrate people in agriculture, I am all about. So go check out that show. And last kind of thing here, Alli, is I want to congratulate you on being a part of the Trailblazer group for NCBA. I am so excited to get to work with you over the next year and moving forward as well, closely over the next year, and then hopefully continuing on as just, friends and networks within the community, within the agriculture community and the beef community. But what are your thoughts? I mean, are you, I'm excited. I know we're both excited. We kind of talked about that, but what are you kind of hoping to get out of it? And where do you see things going for you and your business, just kind of being plugged into a whole nother side of the industry?
I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a lot of fun and a really great learning opportunity, networking opportunity. I've never been to Denver before, other than just being in the airport for like a hot second and then flying away. But I think it's going to be really great. And as we had talked about before, it's a group of 10 of us. It's a very diverse group. It's going to be really interesting to see where everyone is coming from and what their mission is as well. For me, I think I just want to be very comfortable answering the tough questions within my community because, as we all know, I'm from San Diego. It's not a really rainbow and butterfly feel towards agriculture sometimes down here. We do have a pretty heavy animal rights activist group in the area, which is a little bit of a red flag for me. So I want to make sure I'm prepared to deal with a harder group of people that might not understand agriculture. And actually it's been kind of weird, and sorry, my dog is like yipping in the background. she's in the rain and she's like, let me in.
She's saying wrap it up.
I know, she's like, hurry up. No. But anyway, I think for me, I just want to make sure that I am prepared for those kind of tough conversations. And what has been kind of interesting that has like spun off of this, and I don't know if it's just like the stars are aligning or what, but I had one of my old soccer coaches contact me. She's now a dean of a charter school in San Diego, like in the city. And she invited me to come on a panel of 10 women back in March to do a like Women's History Month talk. And basically, she picked several ladies that she knew that were powerful women in her perspective. And I was honored that she had called me. So I had like a speaking event out of nowhere. It like was a week before. I had like little time to prepare. And so I just showed up with a cowboy hat on and some boots and was like, hey guys, like I'm a lady rancher, you know?
Yeah.
But it was like a big group of kids. It was like probably like 300 kids or so.
Oh, wow.
And so, and a lot of them have never set foot on an agricultural, like anything like a ranch or a farm or whatever, or maybe they have, but it was just interesting, like the questions the kids were asking. And you know, it was cool. And I felt like I was like, okay, cool. Like we just got started with Trailblazers. We had one meeting, like just like, hey, how are you? Like, what do you do kind of thing. But we haven't really had the training yet. So I was kind of like in the back of my head, I'm like, man, I wish I had some training before this happened, because I mean, I feel like I did pretty good for the most part. But for example, if you listen to my previous podcast episode that I recorded, I think it released on the 27th of March. I talk a little bit about this, but I had one kid ask me about if we did a kosher kill. And I was like, what? And in my head, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that this is a Jewish thing. Pretty sure somebody has to be certified to do this, but I don't really know. And I told the kid, I was like, I'm not sure if I don't really know a whole lot about that, but I'll tell you how we do process our animals if you're okay with that. And so I explained exactly how we process our animals, because we do all of our butcher, our slaughter stuff on the ranch. So I explained it to the kids, and I was like, hopefully that didn't scare you guys away a little bit, but I mean, it's life, like this is what we have to do in order to feed our country and feed, the world for that matter. So I think that was a good conversation. I actually texted Chandler about that. I was like, so this happened. Hopefully I handled it okay. And he was like, it sounded like you did fine. So that's great. Yeah. And then I also had a reporter contact me this week, and actually yesterday, and she wanted to come up today. And I'm like, I mean, it's raining outside, but same thing. She wanted to do like a female like industry, or no, I'm sorry, male dominated industry, female workers or whatever, like the topic was. And so it's just like interesting how this trailblazer thing is going to come in handy, hopefully. I think so too. But I'm kind of like, oh my God, why are we not like, I feel like I'm not prepared quite yet, but I guess I'm just like getting thrown into the wolves a little bit, but that's okay. I'll figure it out. I'm a sink or swim type of person anyway, so it's okay.
Me too. I'm a kind of fake it till I make it, or a wing it. I do better just not knowing what's coming. So no. And just looking at kind of the itinerary for our in-person training, it's going to be intense, I think, but I think it'll be super good. And just, I think I totally agree with you. I think, I'm confident in my experiences and kind of the way we do things, but speaking about the industry as a whole, I feel intimidated by. I never want to like make a specific producer feel like, oh, well, you didn't talk about how I do things, or that's not how we do things, so you're wrong, or, just that kind of blanket statements. I don't want to do that, but yet how do you describe an entire industry so that people understand what we're doing and what we're trying to do? So I think just navigating some of those things in some difficult conversations and just feeling more equipped to speak on those topics. So I'm excited. I'm so glad we get to do this together.
Yeah,
And
same. We're the two Allis.
I know, right? Every time someone says Alli, we're both gonna look, and maybe we'll figure it out eventually, right?
Yeah, they can just say Fender and then
Right.
Spears. That'll be easier.
My best friend from high school was named Alli too, so that's what it was, Spears and Strauss. So we'll figure it out.
I know. When I worked in a restaurant in the college days, there was literally 4 Allis, and all of our names were spelled differently, but we just went by our last name because it was like. And it would be even crazier if all 4 of us were serving at the same time. So yeah, it just worked out. I'm kind of used to being called by my last name.
Yep, for sure. It's an identifier at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Alli, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me. I look forward to watching you grow and develop in your business, and just the bright future that you've got ahead of you in terms of everything. So before we wrap it up, though, I do want to have you share where people can get in contact with you or keep in the loop. So I'm going to let you do that real quick before we sign off.
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be on your podcast, and I'm so thankful that you came on my podcast. It was a great little swap-a-roo. So thank you so much. That was fun. But yeah, you can find me. Our website is flyingfranch.org. And you can always email me at afender614@gmail.com if you have any questions or want to reach out, or if you want to be on my podcast. I'm totally open to having new guests on there. And as far as like social media, I am on Flying F Ranch on pretty much everything. Instagram's my favorite, so I'm usually on Instagram. I try to do a little TikToking, but it's a little bit weird for me, so I don't know. I'm trying my best. And then it's totally a whole new world. And then I do have an Instagram and Facebook page for my podcast, and it's just Agripreneur Empire. And then I do have a personal Instagram, but it's more like my kids and, stuff like that. So that's just Alli with the I. So it's ALLI Fender. And so, yeah, you can follow me there. You can even message me on there, and I'm happy to respond. But probably like social media wise, I'm probably the most active on Flying F Ranch. I do a lot of more of the advocating on there and sharing our story and like everything about like teaching people about how beef is, just the whole story about beef and all that good stuff. And especially in San Diego area. So that's where I'm the most active at, I guess you could say.
For sure. Well, so definitely get in touch if you are wanting to learn more or connect with Alli in some way. And be sure to go check out our episode on her podcast and then just her podcast as a whole. Alli, thank you so much. And I will see you in a few weeks.
Sounds good. I'm excited. It should be fun.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Ag Chicks. Don't forget to follow along on social media at Ag Chicks for more agricultural related content. And also be sure to check out your favorite podcast gear from www.agchicks.net. We'll see you next time.